The first reading this morning comes from Isaiah chapter 40, 12 through 24. Who has scooped up the ocean in his two hands, or measured the sky between his thumb and little finger? Who has put all the earth's dirt in one of his baskets, weighed each mountain and hill? Why, the nations are but a drop in a bucket, a mere smudge on a window. Watch him sweep up the islands like so much dust off the floor. All the nations add up to simply nothing before him. Less than nothing is more like it, a minus. Have you not been paying attention? Have you not been listening? God sits high above the round ball of earth. The people look like mere ants. He stretches out the skies like a canvas. Yes, like a tent canvas to live under. He ignores what all the princes say and do. The rulers of the earth count for nothing. Princes and rulers don't amount to much. Like seeds barely rooted, just sprouted. They shrivel when God blows on them. Like flecks of chaff, they're gone with the wind. The second reading comes from the letter of Chief Seattle. The president in Washington sends word that he wishes to buy our land. But how can you buy or sell the sky, the land? The idea is strange to us. If you do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them? Every part of the earth is sacred to my people. This we know. Earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. All things are connected like the blood that unites us all. We did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. One thing we know, our God is also your God. One thing we know, which white people may one day discover, our God is the same God. You may think that you own God as you wish to own our land, but you cannot. God's compassion is equal for red people and white people. One thing we know, there is only one God.
I must confess that the events that are unfolding in Israel and in Gaza this morning are touching my heart greatly, and possibly yours. It was, I think, 14 years ago that my memory of Sderot was sitting in a living room on a beautiful tree-lined street with a group of peace activists who had been forging relationships with Muslims in Gaza, sharing their frustration and their angst over the conflict. Now imagining those same streets being overrun with people being kidnapped by those who think terrorism is the answer is pretty much breaking my heart and perhaps yours. It is said that whole histories can be told in a single word. On this Indigenous Peoples' Day, let us begin with a simple English one. Settler. Settler. It's a fine word for most of us, reminiscent of brave colonial frontiersmen and women, of ardent missionaries hacking farms, fields, and dwellings out of forests, building churches and communities to fund and manage and Christianize this daring new life in the wilderness. Remember, for new arrivals, the Americas, North and South, were considered empty, theirs for the taking. That's another loaded word, isn't it? Empty. Empty of what? People like themselves? Instead, they encountered people who walked lightly on the land, people with ancient and fulsome cultures, including whole belief systems that guided their way. For indigenous or native peoples the world around the globe, the word settler has a far from heroic meaning. It's a word that holds within it echoes of violence and domination, physical dislocation, cultural annihilation, and spiritual subjugation. America, it is said, is a nation of immigrants, but this is not true. America, like every colonial enterprise, began as a nation of settlers. Individuals whose mission was not to blend in with the prevailing culture, but to conquer it. Immigrants came later in the form of those who sought to embrace, not replace, the land of their dreams. Again, while I know our hearts are aching for the violence and devastation taking place in Israel right now, it must be noted the British occupation of Palestine in 1948 involved the displacement of thousands and thousands of its indigenous citizens who were relocated to refugee camps that exist to this day. My land, your land, our land, their land, Ukraine's land, Russia's land, whatever happened to the Creator's land. Joshua storms into Canaan. Constantine waves the Christian flag over his conquering armies. Centuries of conquistadors and colonialists have simply assumed white is right. And the rest, my friends, is history. Now, there is a second word that holds the history of an entire people in its name. It comes from the Anishinaabe tribe, Nikanagana. Nikanagana. From their earliest stories, the Anishinaabe and tribes throughout the Americas understood themselves as related not only to each other, but to all of creation. The animate and inanimate world is one, each charged with a sacred duty to care for one another. I love the folk legend of the clan that overhunted the deer in its region. Soon they discovered that the deer had all left. During the ensuing winter of cold and hunger, they realized their greed had driven them away. So in the spring, they sent out runners to find them. Finally, in a great ceremonial act, the deer and the humans agreed to cohabit the land once again, as long as mutual respect was maintained. Nikanagina. We are all kin. We all have something to give and something to gain when need and respect are in perfect balance. As Chief Seattle writes, this we know, the earth does not belong to us, we belong to the earth. All things are connected like the blood that unites us all. We did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. One thing we know, our God is also your God. One thing we know, which white people may one day discover, our God is the same God. You may think that you own God as you wish to own our land, but you cannot. God's compassion is equal for red people and white. Isn't this the definition of God's kingdom God's kingdom on earth, comma, as it is in heaven? What would it mean today to embrace this notion of kinship? As I said previously, this is the Christianity the future is calling us to embrace. The tribal, consumer-driven, power-based, human-centric world we have created has got to evolve. And so has the Jesus many still believe in. You, me, all of us together have such a role to play in this transformation. We are playing that role. Ambi in Anishinaabe, let's go. The third word in my lexicon this morning is another English one, decolonization, or if you prefer the native version, unforgetting. Decolonization refers to undoing the effects of colonization on native peoples, be it in Asia, Africa, Australia, the Hawaiian Islands, the Americas. The passing of colonization has been both peaceful and violent, but never unwarranted. Decolonization includes making amends, restoring or protecting land, ensuring legal systems exist to safeguard indigenous cultures and people. It can even involve making reparations. For indigenous people, decolonization means unforgetting, reclaiming the truth of the past, those hard truths, those hard stories, acknowledging the crimes perpetuated against First Nation citizens. But more than that, it means integrating, sharing, and embracing common values while admitting differences. It means restoring the balance between all the members of God's creation. Which leads us to our last word for today, Eloheh. Eloheh, a Cherokee word meaning harmony, wholeness, abundance, and peace. Its closest synonym is the Hebrew word shalom, meaning peace, harmony, wholeness, completeness, prosperity, welfare, and tranquility. In the Torah, the word shalom is used to describe a state of being in which one feels whole and complete. Yet it is also used to describe the act of making something whole or complete. Eloheh, shalom, both our aspiration and our purpose. You see, Jesus was never a Christian imperialist. Our faith is utterly compatible with that of our indigenous brothers and sisters if shalom is our true goal. Here again, these beautiful words from Isaiah, from a Native American translation. Who has scooped up the ocean in his two hands, or measured the sky between his thumb and his little finger? Who has put all the earth's dirt in one of his baskets, weighed each mountain and hill? Why, the nations are but a drop in the bucket, a mere smudge on a window. Watch him sweep up the islands like so much dust off the floor. All the nations add up to simply nothing before him. Less than nothing is more like it, a minus. Have you not been paying attention? Have you not been listening? God sits high above the round ball of earth. The people look like mere ants. He stretches out the skies like a canvas, yes, like a tent, canvas to live under. He ignores what all the princes say and do. The rulers of the earth count for nothing. Princes and rulers don't amount to much. Like seeds barely rooted, just sprouted, they shrivel when God blows on them like flecks of chaff. They are gone with the wind. As we pause for a time of reflection, I'd like you to think about your relatives, your anakanagana, your lineage, your ancestors that shaped you, and the cultures that shaped them. In Native practice, I invite you to go back 3 generations to your great-grandparents, and then go ahead 3 generations to great-grandchildren, perhaps not yet born. 7 generations of inheritance and legacy. What have you received? What will you pass on? Nikanagana. Amen.